Today we're going to cover another European monarchy. We're going to look at Spain today. And in another video, I touched on the Spanish monarchy while discussing the Habsburgs. But today we're going to go all the way back to the earliest ancestors of the Spanish monarchy and trace things throughout the history all the way down to the current King of Spain. Now, in previous videos, we also talked about the French monarchy, which is here in the blue, and the English, later British monarchy, which is here in the red. But Spain is this greenish color over here, and that's what we'll be doing today. Now, the first thing you need to know about Spain is that Spain was not originally a single kingdom, but was several kingdoms. And if you look at the current coat of arms of Spain, you'll notice that the shield here in the middle has 4 sections or quadrants, and these represent 4 medieval kingdoms in Spain. We have the kingdom of Castile, which is this castle symbol. We have the purple lion of Leon. We have this kind of chain arrangement here, which was the symbol for Navarre. And we have the red and yellow stripes, which is for the kingdom of Aragon. And if we look at a map of Spain about 1,000 years ago, you'll notice 2 main sections. The green section at the bottom represents the various independent Muslim kingdoms that existed at the time, and then at the top in the yellow are the 4 kingdoms that we just mentioned, the Catholic kingdoms of Leon, Castile, Navarre, and Aragon. And you can see that Leon was originally the largest of the 4. But over the next few centuries, these various Catholic kingdoms conquered the rest of this territory down here. We'll see that Portugal also splits off from Spain, but the borders between these kingdoms would change significantly over the next few centuries. And that is why we get these 4 different sections of the current coat of arms representing those 4 original Catholic kingdoms. But let's go back to the family tree chart, and we're going to go up here to the top and start with the kings of Leon, since that was the dominant kingdom originally. Now, the earliest kings of Leon trace their roots to the kings of Asturias. And Asturias was a kingdom that existed before the 4 kingdoms that I just mentioned. It was the first Christian kingdom to reestablish itself after the Muslim conquest of Spain. And today, the heir to the Spanish throne is still called the Prince of Asturias or the Princess of Asturias, kind of like the Prince of Wales in the United Kingdom. So we can see here we get the earliest kings of Leon, and there's a couple others here that aren't shown, but I wanted to show the direct line that then leads to the future kings of Spain. While the Asturian dynasty was ruling in Leon, there was another dynasty forming in Navarre, and that was the House of Jimenez. And eventually there becomes a king known as Sancho the Great, who expands his territory into the territories of some of those other kingdoms that existed at the time. And you'll see here that this original line of kings from Leon ends here, but then this individual had a daughter who marries the son of Sancho the Great. And so this house of Jimenez, which was originally from Navarre, becomes the ruling house of Leon. And at that point, Leon also consisted of most of Christian Spain at the time. And so therefore, this individual, who becomes known as Ferdinand the Great, is named Emperor of Spain, and he's considered one of the earliest individuals to rule all of Spain. Now, Sancho also made another son, King of Aragon. So at this point, we have Aragon starting to establish itself as a separate kingdom, but the primary king was over here. And but both of these kings can be considered from the House of Jimenez. And the House of Jimenez rules for quite some time. We have Ferdinand the Great's son then becomes Emperor of Spain. And then this individual, though, does not have a male heir. So we have a daughter that becomes Empress of Spain. And so here the house name changes to the House of Burgundy after her husband, Raymond of Burgundy, who was from France. And you can see here several marriages into the French royal family. And so therefore the future monarchs of Spain are then all descendants of Charlemagne because of this connection to the French royal family. And you can see there Hugh Capet, the original king of France. They would also be descendants of him. Now, Alfonso VI also had a daughter who married the Count of Portugal, and it's from this point forward that then Portugal becomes a separate kingdom, and the monarchs of Portugal are not on this chart, and we're not going to cover them in this video, but from this point on, Portugal is now its own kingdom. But we're going to continue the line here, which now is called the House of Burgundy. And we get a final emperor here, Alfonso VII. But after Alfonso VII, he divides his kingdom between two sons. And so Sancho III becomes King of Castile. And again, this is the symbol for the Kingdom of Castile. And King Ferdinand II becomes King of Leon. And this purple lion is the symbol for the Kingdom of Leon. And as we already mentioned, Aragon is continuing over here as its own kingdom. And there is its symbol, the red and yellow vertical stripes. Now, at this point here, you can see that their house name changed because one of the descendants of the Jimenez dynasty marries the Count of Barcelona, and therefore the ruling house in Aragon becomes the House of Barcelona. So at this point we have the House of Barcelona ruling in Aragon, and we have the House of Burgundy ruling in Leon and Castile. And you can see that there's only these two independent kings of Leon before this king marries a daughter of the King of Castile, and then they produce an heir that then from this point forward Castile and Leon becomes a single kingdom, and these kings are all kings of Castile and Leon. Now, we also had kings in Navarre at this point, but they are not shown. But let's keep going on to look at what happens with Aragon and Castile, because they end up being the two largest kingdoms. You can see the Aragonese line here and the Castile line here. Now, after a king named Alfonso the 11th, we get an illegitimate line here. So there was a male son who was not the son of the queen, but after the last male heir dies without any other male heirs, the throne then passes to this illegitimate son, and we get a new house, the House of Trastamara. And we can see then that the House of Trastamara rules in Castile. You can see there was some intermarriage between the two sides, but then the kingdoms still stay separate all the way down to these two well-known individuals in history, King Ferdinand II of Aragon and Queen Isabella I of Castile. And these two monarchs marry, and the kingdoms are joined together. And so it is from this point in history that we now have a country that is known as Spain. So Castile was already made up of the former kingdoms of Castile and Leon, and at this point Aragon had taken over part of Navarre. So the original kingdoms of Aragon and Navarre represented here, and so when these two monarchs united, you get all four kingdoms uniting together under a single monarchy. Now, Queen Isabella died first, and after her death, King Ferdinand, in effect, ruled over both kingdoms, but technically their daughter was the ruling monarch of Castile, and then her husband jointly with her, but he died young. Now, he was a member of the infamous Habsburg family, and it is from him that the Habsburg line comes to rule Spain. So after Ferdinand dies, technically Queen Joanna the Mad is queen of both Aragon and Castile now, but it is really her son who is in charge, and he is King Charles I of Spain. He is the son of this individual here, of the Habsburg line. And so therefore the House of Habsburg is now controlling the Kingdom of Spain. And what happens then is when this individual's father, who was the Holy Roman Emperor, when he dies, Charles is the closest male heir, and so therefore he is also named the Holy Roman Emperor. So he's more well known as Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, but he was Charles I of Spain. So he is the first ruler of the House of Habsburg to rule in Spain, and it is the Habsburg family that then rule in Spain. He, however, abdicated before he died, and when he did that, he actually split the two areas back. So the Holy Roman Emperorship went to his brother, whereas he left the Kingdom of Spain to his son. So these future monarchs of Spain are no longer Holy Roman Emperors. It was just this one individual here. So following Charles V, we get Philip II as the next king of Spain, and this is when Spain is at the height of its power and starting to build an overseas empire. Philip II married 4 times, trying to get a male heir. His second wife was the Queen of England, known as Bloody Mary. And if they had produced an heir, that certainly would have changed history, but they did not. He tried marrying a princess of France, and that didn't work out. And in the end, he married his own niece, a member of the Habsburg family, the Austrian branch, and he produced an heir who was Philip III, the next king of Spain. And as I mentioned in the Habsburg video, you get a lot of these close intermarriages with the Austrian branch of their family. So King Philip III was followed by King Philip IV, and then all the way down to Charles II. And it's here that the Habsburg line in Spain ends. King Charles was a very, very ill person, possibly because of all this intermarrying. You can see the infamous Habsburg chin developing in all these individuals. Now, when Charles II was king, it created a bit of a crisis because he did not have any heirs, and King Philip IV also didn't have any other sons available. So there was this question about who would be the King of Spain after King Charles II dies. And this is during the time that King Louis XIV was reigning in France, and he was a very dominant power in Europe at the time. So there was a fear that he might take control of Spain and build a huge empire. So there were two individuals that were put forward as possible heirs. There was this individual here who was not Holy Roman Emperor yet. His name was Charles. He was the son of the Holy Roman Emperor at the time. And it was thought that the Holy Roman Emperorship would pass through the elder brother and would continue here, and that perhaps this individual could be then become King of Spain, and the Kingdom of Spain would pass through him. Little did they know that this individual would die without heirs, and actually Charles would become the Holy Roman Emperor. But the Kingdom of Spain did not go to him anyway. The person it did go to was King Philip V, and I'll explain why. King Philip V was actually of the House of Bourbon, which was the ruling house in France, and it's all because of this marriage here. Louis XIV of France was married to the daughter of King Philip IV of Spain. And so you can see here then that the easiest way for the throne to pass would be through this daughter. But because the powers in Europe at the time didn't want a single king for both France and Spain, what they ended up coming up with is a plan whereby the oldest grandson here of Louis XIV, the line would go through him to Louis XV of France, and the kings of France would go from this line, and the younger son, Philip, would inherit the throne of Spain. And so then the Spanish kings would then continue through him. Now I should also point out that when Philip V became king of Spain, he renounced all right to the French throne for himself and his descendants, which becomes important for those who are trying to figure out who is the rightful heir to the French throne today. But that's another topic. So Philip V had three different sons who became king after him, and then the line passed to his grandson, King Charles IV of Spain, and then we get a King Ferdinand VII. And during the reign of King Ferdinand VII, this fellow over here, a well-known figure in history, Napoleon, was in power and building his empire. So there was a period in time when he appointed his elder brother to be King of Spain, King Joseph I. So the House of Bonaparte ruled Spain for a very brief period in between these two reigns. But eventually the throne went back to the Bourbon line. And then Ferdinand VII had a daughter who becomes the reigning queen after him. Now, this actually led to a problem that haunted Spain for about 100 years. You see, originally the Bourbons followed the French rule of requiring a male-only line. But on his deathbed, King Ferdinand supposedly changed that to allow his daughter to become queen. And there were those that disagreed with this decision. And they supported Isabel's uncle, who was a brother of the king. His name was Karl, and his followers became known as Carlists. And for the next 100 years, there were various wars in which the Carlists had a different succession, and they wanted their male-only line to take over the monarchy. But they never did succeed, and Isabella became queen, but she ran into a different problem with a different faction, and eventually she was forced to abdicate during a period known as the Glorious Revolution in Spain. And instead of her, another king was elected, and that was King Amadeo I. and he was from the House of Savoy, and he was actually the son of the first modern king of Italy. But that particular revolution did not last, and he remained king only for a few years. And after him, there was a short period where Spain was a republic, but then the Bourbon monarchy was restored, and Isabella's son, Alfonso XII, became king. And we go back to the Bourbon monarchy. Now, I should also point out that Queen Isabella married her cousin, who was a direct male line descendant of King Charles IV, and therefore with Alfonso XII we actually go back to a direct male line only from the Bourbons. So actually all these future kings can still trace a direct male line to the original Bourbon ancestors. So we have King Alfonso XII, and after him comes his son, King Alfonso XIII. And Alfonso XIII married a granddaughter of Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom, and therefore we get a connection to the British royal family from this point forward. Now, during the reign of Alfonso XIII, Spain decided that it wanted to become a republic, and so the monarchy was abolished. After that, an individual named General Franco took over the country and was a dictator until the 1970s, and so there was no king in Spain during that time. Before his death, Franco decided that he would allow the monarchy to be reestablished after his death, but he didn't want this individual, the son of the last king, to become king. So he appointed as his successor Juan Carlos I, who becomes king in 1975. Now, there's a curious thing happening here. This heir to the throne actually had an older brother, but this older brother was deaf, and therefore renounced his claim to the throne for himself and his descendants. And that's why this individual is not the King of Spain today. However, this individual claims the right to the French throne, and I have a different video that explains why that is. But for now, we just need to know that the line of the Spanish monarchs passes through this son to Juan Carlos I, who reigned until 2014, when he abdicated in favor of his son, King Philippe, who becomes King Philippe the Sixth. Philippe being the same name as Philip, but he uses a different spelling than we're used to for those previous kings, and he is the current King of Spain since 2014. He has two young daughters. The eldest is Princess Leonor, and she is the heir presumptive. And I actually made this change on the chart due to a comment on a previous video. So do make comments if you see mistakes, and I will make changes if those comments turn out to be correct. And the reason why I changed this from heir apparent to heir presumptive is because this individual is female in Spain. There is still male precedence. So if Philippe were to have a son, which he probably won't, but if he were, that son would actually become king before his older sister. But that is unlikely to happen. Princess Leonor will probably be the next Queen of Spain. So there we have the history of the Spanish monarchy, all the way from the beginning through the Habsburgs and Bourbons down to the current King of Spain today. And as always, if you want a copy of the poster of this chart, you can get it at my website, usefulcharts.com. Thanks for watching.